What's up, everybody? It's your girl Toyzilla, and right now on this episode of Toyzilla Streams Book Club, we headed back with The Looking Glass Wars by Frank Better. Now, again, this is not the first video in the series. We are starting on chapter 10. So if you haven't seen the chapters before this one, go look at the previous videos so that you can be caught up with the rest of us, okay? So again, like I like to say, we haven't received any artwork. While we're reading along, if you'd like to draw pictures of what's happening inside of the chapters and then sending them in, I'd love to go ahead and show them on the next stream that we do where we're reading together, and that just really makes me happy. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get this book club started. All right. Okay. So, chapter 10. The force of the blast knocked Alice over in her chair, and she was still on the ground, coughing from dust and debris, when she saw innocent courtiers and civilians attacked by a mob of Red Scarred soldiers and fierce ex-Wonderlanders. No! A hand clamped over Alice's mouth. It was Dodge. He pulled her under the table with him. Keep quiet or they'll get you too. Stay here and don't move. Alice wasn't planning on moving, not out from under the table at any rate. Too much was happening and none of it good, but Dodge was with her. She had him. As long as Dodge and I stay together. In the quarter moment after the explosion, General Doppelganger ran behind a thick curtain and pulled a lever attached to a crank half buried in the floor. The black floor tiles of the bottom flip of the blah, blah, blah. The black floor tiles of the room flipped over to reveal an army of white chessmen, knights, rooks, bishops, pawns. The chessmen battled the invading card soldiers, blades swinging and bodies falling. General Doppelganger split into the twin figures of Generals Doppel and Ganger, and each of them split in two, so that now there were two General Doppels and two General Gangers battling red soldiers. Not that Alice realized that the poisonous-looking woman who shouted "off with their heads" was her Aunt Red. She hadn't made the connection yet because where was her mother? There, fending off red soldiers 2 and 3 at a time. Alice never knew her mother could fight. She flinched with each near hit Genevieve suffered, watching as the queen imagined new weapons for herself. Swords, sabers, spiked clubs. Whenever one was not from her grip, she was always armed with 4 weapons at once, her imagination swinging 2 of them to fend off attacks from behind. But why didn't she imagine the card soldiers dead? Alice tried doing it herself. She closed her eyes and pictured the soldiers piled in a lifeless heap in the center of the room. Bidwick was not there to explain that. By the power of imagination alone, nobody could kill a creature that had the will to live. When Alice opened her eyes, the room was still in chaos. White pawns and rooks and the occasional knight falling at the hands of the enemy. The cries of pain and defeat still filled her ears. A body slammed against the tabletop. Dodge put his arm around her as if that could keep her from harm. Don't move. Don't move, he whispered. She huddled against him. She didn't want to watch anymore. Wanted to bury her face in Dodge's shoulder and lift it up again to find the horrid scene over. Everything as it used to be. Hatter Madigan removed his top hat, holding it by the brim. He flicked his wrist hard and fast. The hat flattened and divided into a series of S-shaped rotary blades held together at the center. He winged the weapon across the room, the blades spinning and slicing through the enemy before embedding themselves in the mortar of the far wall. One of the Red's 4 cards pulled the weapon out of the wall, but throwing Hatter's top hat required a technique not easily mastered, and every time the soldier tried employing the quick wrist flick he'd seen Hatter use, the weapon only clattered to the floor. Hatter fought his way toward the top hat, flipping and tumbling through the air, his long military coat flaring like a cape. His steel bracelet snapped open and became propeller blades on the outward side of his wrist. His backpack sprouted blades and corkscrews of various lengths and thicknesses, like an open Swiss Army knife. The forecard was growing more desperate as Hatter approached. The top hat clanged on the floor one last time. Hatter picked up the weapon, examining it to make sure it hadn't been damaged. One must learn how to use it, he said. Here, let me show you the proper way. These were the last words the soldier ever heard. Red strolled through the mayhem of battle unharmed. Whenever a white pawn made the mistake of attacking her, she flicked him with a long bony finger and sent him hurling into the stone walls or the pointed end of someone's spear. It gave her no small pride to see the cat performing so well in combat, poking fatal holes in chessmen with his claws, easily taking out as many of them as Hatter did card soldiers. She was also pleased to note the speed with which the Sioux families had fallen into obedience. No sooner had she ordered the removal of everyone's head than the Lord of Diamonds bravely stepped forward, bowed, and said, Your Majesty, we regret that we have been deprived of your presence for so long and rejoice that you returned. The spades and clubs echoed him with bows and found the guards of their own. How quickly people fold on you, you know what I'm saying? That's just horrible. So she would let them live for the moment. Besides, there was something intriguing about the young diamond boy. He stood under the protective arm of his father, seeming more interested than scared, as if learning all he could from the violence around him. Who knew? He might grow up to be useful. Sir Justice Anders cut and slashed to the invading card soldiers. He rescued several chessmen momentarily overpowered by a band of two cards, and when he spotted an opening towards the cat, he made a run at the creature, sword poised to strike. Dodge saw what was about to happen. Watch this, he said to Alice, proud of his father's skills and bravery. But the cat had no trouble dealing with the leader of the palace guard. With the back of his hand, he knocked Sir Justice to the ground, sent the man's sword skittering across the floor and out of reach. The cat picked up Sir Justice and swiped him with a claw. No! Before Alice could stop him, Dodge bolted out from under the table, snatched up his father's sword, and attacked the cat. Yeah! The assassin merely grinned, knocking him to the ground with a light blow. 6 white chessmen converged on him and kept him from finishing off the boy. His right cheek bleeding from the 4 parallel cuts left by the cat's claws. Dodge hunched over his dead father, sobbing. Alice, alone under the table, also started to cry. Tears had been wetting her cheeks from the beginning, but they seemed to belong to somebody else, not a part of her, as if her body was responding to the horrific scene before her brain could comprehend it. Now she entered into grief, shaking with the force of her sobs. Sir Justice dead? Dodge abandoning me? Why did father ever leave? And where's mother? Where's... A face appeared before her, colorless, sunken eyes, ravaged and diseased-looking skin, matted hair. Hello, niece. Alice felt herself lifted out from under the table, held aloft by her long black hair. So you were to be queen, were you? The woman snorted, unimpressed. Aunt Red? None other. Let her go, Red! It was Genevieve. Are you telling me what to do? Red sneered. Look around. The time for giving orders is over. Please let her go. Red became impatient. You know I won't. You brought this on yourself, Queen Genevieve. I can't afford to leave any hearts alive, except myself, obviously. You can have me instead. Stupid sister. I already have you. And by the way, if you are still expecting your king, I regret to inform you that he won't be returning home, ever. Red scepter issued forth a cloud of red smoke, in the middle of which flickered a series of images. King Nolan and his men ambushed as they approached Heart Palace, Red marching up to the king and killing him with their sharp, knobbly scepter. Father! Alice cried. Oh, my sweet king. Genevieve gasped and sent 18 steel-tipped cones, each with a point as sharp as a dagger, zooming toward Red, who lazily raised a hand. The cones froze in midair, then clumped on the floor. The heavy chandelier above Red's head came loose and fell toward her. Red made as if to brush a gnat from in front of her face, and the chandelier crumbled to dust. Is that the best you can do, sister? Red scoffed. A series of double-edged spears cartwheeled toward her. She knocked them aside one by one, bored with her own strength, tired of Genevieve's pestering. Playtime's over, she hissed. Red pressed her index finger against the ball of her thumb, and Alice started to choke. It felt as if her throat had swollen shut. It didn't matter that her mother had failed. She herself had to think of something, to imagine something, but she couldn't focus. A wheel of cheese rolled against Red's foot. A pair of slippers danced in the air. Red laughed. You were to be queen with an imagination like that? Alice thought she was going to explode from lack of air. She fumbled with the giant jabberwock tooth hanging on her neck and jabbed the pointed end into Red's arm as hard as she could. It stuck. Ah! Red released her grip and Alice dropped to the floor. Before she'd even sucked in one lungful of air, she and her mother were racing down a hall, their feet barely touching the ground. They charged into the queen's private rooms, past the couches and overstuffed chairs, past the royal outfits hanging in the wardrobe, and headed for the bathroom where the cat stepped in front of them, lunged, and looked like the end for both of them, with something weird past the princess's head and thump into the cat's chest. The cat fell at their feet. Hatter stepped over the beast and removed his top hat from the fatal wound. Take Alice and go, Queen Genevieve said, pointing at the looking glass, as far away as possible. But, Your Majesty, I'll follow you if and when I can. You have to keep the princess safe until she's old enough to rule. She's the only chance Wonderland has to survive. Promise me. Hatter bowed his head. His life's mission was to protect the queen. So long as Genevieve lived, he should remain and fight the enemy. But he understood that Wonderland's future depended on Alice's survival. The queendom was more important than any single queen. He lifted his eyes to Genevieve's. I promise, he said. Genevieve knelt down in front of her daughter. No matter what happens, I will always be near you, sweetheart. On the other side of the looking glass. And never ever forget who you are. Do you understand? I want to stay with you. I know, Alex. I love you. No, I'm staying. Alice threw her arms around her mother. A wall crashed down, and there stood Red with a platoon of card soldiers behind her. Oh, how sweet. Let's have a group hug, she said, moving towards them, hardly looking like the hugging type. Hatter grabbed Alice and jumped into the looking glass. Genevieve smashed the glass with her scepter and turned to face Red, unable to believe it when, in her peripheral vision, she saw the cat, on the floor with a gaping hole in his chest, open his eyes. His wound healed and he jumped at her. It all happened in an instant. Genevieve conjured a white bolt of energy from her imagination and thrust it into the cat, killing him a second time. The card soldiers stepped forward to attack the queen, but Red stopped them. She yanked the jagged bolt out of the cat and whirled it like a baton. It turned red in her hand. Well, sister, what can I say? I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'm tickled to death to see you go. She slammed the bolt into the floor. Dozens of black roses sprouted from the point of impact, their thorny stems wrapping themselves around Genevieve, pricking her skin and binding her fast. The rose petals opened and closed, to the mouths eager for a bite of royal flesh. Off with your head, Red ordered, pulling the energy bolt out of the floor. No! Genevieve struggled against the steams of roses. Her people would be abandoned to Red and Alice, just a child. Red swung the bolt hard. Genevieve's head went one way, her body another, and her crown rolled on the floor like a dropped coin. Red picked up the crown and put it on her own head. The queen is dead. Long live the queen. The platoon of renegade soldiers cheered. Red kicked the cat where he lay on the floor, tongue lolling in his mouth, the picture of death. Get up! You still have 7 more lives. The cat's eyes fluttered open. Find Alice and kill her. With a wave of her hand, the looking glass was once again whole. The cat jumped through in pursuit of the only living heart besides Red. That was some heavy damage right there, wasn't it? Can't wait to see what happens. Chapter 11, Crystal Transport, also known as Looking Glass Transport, was not unusual in Wonderland. Most looking glasses served as portals to the Crystal Continuum, a network of byways that enabled any and every Wonderlander to enter through one looking glass and exit from another. Focused looking glasses led to specific destinations, like the corner of Wondertropolis Way and Timon Street. Unfocused looking glasses allowed travelers to choose their own destinations, provided that there were looking glasses at those destinations out of which they could be reflected. In Queendom Sporamus states, as a body underwater tends to rise to the surface, a body entering a looking glass wants to be reflected out. It took practice to stay inside the continuum and master basic navigational skills. An inexperienced traveler might enter a looking glass in his own home, thinking to pay a visit to a friend across town, only to be reflected out of a looking glass at his next door neighbor's house. The traveler might then enter his next door neighbor's looking glass, to be reflected out at the house next door to his next door neighbor, and so on until he reached his friend across town. Given time and experience, he would be able to make the trip with fewer stops. Covering longer distances in the crystal continuum was tough, nearly impossible for all but the most experienced traveler. But short trips were within the skill range of everyone. The looking glass in the Queen's private rooms, however, were not linked to the rest of the continuum. It was a focused glass, to be used for emergencies by the royal family and their intimates. It deposited the traveler deep in a forest. Exit glass was well camouflaged by a tight-lit shrub. Having entered the continuum, Alice glanced back to see the wavering image of her mother growing progressively smaller among the brilliant crystalline surfaces along which she and Hatter traveled. Her mother exploded into 1,000 fragments, jagged bits of Genevieve fluttering separately. Mother! And then there was nothing but blackness. It seemed like the end of everything. A black void rushed up behind him, as happened when a focused looking glass was destroyed, its path to a specific destination obliterated. Where was she being taken? Where? 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 Closer and closer the void came, gaining on him, and then she awoke, still in Hatter's arms, her cheek bouncing against his shoulder. Portal sleep was a side effect of looking glass transport among the young and inexperienced. Alice and Hatter were no longer in the continuum. They raced through a pitch dark wood. Alice could see nothing ahead of her or behind, and she wouldn't even have known they were in a wood if she hadn't heard the whispering voices of the trees all around. It started to rain, to thunder and lightning. The wind picked up. How could Hatter see where he was going? From overhead she heard the sound of screaming, pain-riddled banshees. Seekers, Hunter said, more to himself than to Alice. Yes, seekers alerting whoever was following them of their location, because someone or something was definitely following them. Hatter could hear it speeding toward them through the underbrush, breaking branches and splashing through puddles in its headlong pursuit. After what felt to Alice like a lifetime, the whispering woods opened into a wide expanse and they came to a precipice. It took her a second to realize where she was. The cliff overlooking the pool of tears, where she and Dodge had stood only a short time earlier. How she wished Dodge were with her now. The water was dark and roiling. All at once she understood. No one ever comes back, she said, looking forlornly into the pool. But you will, said Hatter. Have to. Which was when the cat burst into the clearing and sprang at them. His arms extended, Hatter jumped. The cat snagged the sleeve of the princess's birthday dress, tearing it off with his claws, but that was all he got. Alice's heart, holding tight to Hatter Madigan, plummeted toward the surface of the water below. Chapter 12. Point your feet down, Hatter shouted. Holding himself as straight as he could, he knew that if he and Alice didn't hit the water with as little impact as possible, it would be like a landing on a sheet of diamond and they'd be killed. Alice barely had time to do as he instructed before they shot deep into the pool. She lost her grip on the military man. He reached for her, but she panicked, flailing, and then she was out of reach. Falling deeper underwater, she opened her eyes, saw nothing but foam and a rush of bubbles, and shut them again, not wanting to face the unknown. Just when she thought she couldn't hold her breath any longer and would drown in the depths, she stopped in reverse directions, heading up toward the surface with the same force and speed as her descent. Whoosh! She was out of the water and in the air, cannonballing out of a dirty puddle in the middle of the street where a parade was taking place. People dressed in various shades of dull, with strange anonymous faces, were crowding the pavements and applauding her. All these jumping and spinning and juggling people, and are those soldiers? She had been mistaken for a member of a gypsy troupe, tumbling and twirling and performing magic tricks alongside a marching regiment. Bravo, bravo, the crowd applauded. 5 bowler hats, an ivory tipped cane, a pair of tortoise shell, a pair of tortoise, a pair of tortoise shell eyeglasses, a rolled up newspaper, a potato, and 2 plates of steak and kitty pie tipped to the air and circled overhead. The rolled up newspaper smacked into a boy sitting on his father's shoulders. One woman ended up with pie on her face. Dazed, Alice didn't even realize it was her imagination that had caused the objects to take flight. She was keeping her eye on the dirty puddle, hoping Hatter would appear. Then a gilded open carriage pulled by 8 horses decked out in jeweled harnesses splashed through the puddle, and she caught a glimpse of a woman. A queen. Surely it was a queen, inside waving to the crowds. Mother? It was possible. Genevieve might have arrived in this world before her. If anyone could do it, and maybe being a queen in one world meant you were recognized as such in another. Alice forgot about the dirty puddle and chased after the carriage, at which point the bowler hat's eyeglasses, cane, potato, and steak and kidney pie dropped to the ground. Mother! Mother! Wait! She weaved her way through the parading soldiers toward the queen's carriage. The soldiers bumped and elbowed her. Get lost, brat! Away with you, dirty urchin! She hardly noticed. She was gaining on the carriage. Her mother would see, order her lifted up onto the equipage's plush cushion, and they would be reunited. It had been a test, Genevieve would say. Alice's first test as future queen, and nothing more. She was within 100 feet of the carriage when, having reached the end of the parade route, it abruptly turned into a side street and picked up speed. The entrance to the street blocked by a line of soldiers to prevent anyone from following. With as much pride as she could muster, armed with a firm belief in her own entitlement, she was a princess. Alice approached the soldier standing guard. "Where is that carriage going?" No answer. Maybe they hadn't heard her. She was about to ask again when one of the soldiers deigned to look in her direction, and judging by the look on his face, as if someone had shoved a smelly radish under his nose, he was not impressed by Alice's rough and tumble appearance. Alice glanced down at her dress, torn by the cat and wet from the pool of tears. She looked far from regal. "To Buckingham Palace, where'd you think?" he said. But Alice wasn't thinking. Events still following too closely and too quickly one after another for her to make much sense of them. Buckingham Palace was simply the place where her mother had gone. "And where is this palace?" she asked. "You don't know where Buckingham Palace is? If you don't tell me, I can make life difficult for you," Mr. mused the soldier. "That right. And why should I tell you where the palace is? Like as not, you'll have to do the queen some harm. I am Princess Alice Hart. The queen is my mother, and your well. The soldier turned to the fellow sitting next to him, who had overheard everything. "George, this girl here says her mother's the queen." "You don't say," said George, turning to the soldier next to him. "Timothy, you hear that? This little girl's mother's the queen. And we'd have to die protecting her, I suppose." "All hail the royal lady," Timothy said, bowing. The soldiers laughed. Nothing was worse than imagination used in the service of anger. Alice knew, but these soldiers were too disrespectful. It may have been the distorting properties of her anger, or the muck of this alien city, but when she imagined soldiers' mouths sewn shut, their coats and breeches toward the seams instead, thinking they had split their uniforms from laughing so hard, the soldiers laughed even harder. Alice's anger drained out of her, leaving her sad and doubtful. Could it be that her mother hadn't been in the carriage? Hadn't she seen her mother burst into 1,000 fragments, leaving only blackness, nothingness in her place? And why had her imagination failed her? Without realizing it, she walked away from the soldiers. "Hatter," she called, but there were only strangers, plots of them conversing on the pavement, others hurrying on their way to who knew where. There was only the grime and soot and the horse dung stink of the streets. "Hatter!" She had to get back to the puddle that had landed her in this world. It could reunite her with Hatter, maybe even return her to Wonderland. She retraced her steps, but the street was muddled with so many puddles. What if she'd gone too far and passed it? Everything appeared equally unfamiliar. Could she have covered so much distance while chasing the carriage? What if she never found the puddle? What would happen when the sun broke through the clouds? If she stopped to think about what she was doing, though, if she had stopped to think about what she was going through, no, don't. Her father murdered. Her mother most likely dead. Sir Justice Anders' throat torn open. Sir Justice Anders' throat torn open. And Dodge, her best friend. But don't think about it. Don't. Stuck in this alien place. Alone. Don't. She had to be strong. She was a princess, the future queen of Wonderland. She shouldn't weep like a baby. She took a running start toward the nearest puddle, jumped, and landed in the middle of it, splashing herself and a lady and gentleman walking past. "Oh, good heavens!" the woman protested. The man made as if to chase after Alice, but she had already stepped off of the puddle and was sprinting toward another. She jumped into it and thoroughly soaked a dapper young chap who'd just come from a visit with his tailor. "Ugh! The cravat alone is worth more than you beastly thing." Alice splashed from puddle to puddle, squeezing shut her eyes as she took to the air, imagining hard that she was back in Wonderland. Opening her eyes as she came down, sprays of water going every which way, only to find that she was still in this alien world. I'll never find my way home. Never, ever, ever! All hope gone, she jumped up and down in a single puddle, yelling, "No, no, no!" Until it was impossible to tell which were her tears and which splotches of street water. "Taking a bath or what?" said the boy, watching from a safe distance out of the splashing range. She stopped jumping, sniffed. The boy wore gray breeches, patched to the knees and thighs, a frock coat much too big for him, the tail of which reached down practically to his heels, and cracked leather boots with no laces. "I'm Princess Alice, Heart of Wonderland," she said defiantly. "Yeah, and I'm Prince Quigley Gaffer of Chelsea. That's one little outfit you're wearing." She looked down at her damp, dirty birthday dress, a flouncy thing, tied at the waist and poofing out below her knees in a cumbersomely wide circle. Its collar high and floppy and ruffled, it was decorated with appliqued hearts, the colors only available in Wonderland, and the dress was a rare sight even there, where it would be taken from the princess's wardrobe and aired only once a year. The royal tailors refitting it to accommodate Alice's growing body. "It's all I have," she said. It started her crying again. Quigley considered her for a moment. Even smudged with dirt and scum, and with tears leaking out of her eyes, there was something about the girl that intrigued him. She seemed brighter than everything around her. It was as if she were lit from within by a lantern that shone faintly through the pores of her skin. "Better come with me if you want dry clothes, Your Majesty," he said. He started to walk off. Alice hesitated. Half a block away, Quigley turned. "Off we go," he called, waving for her to follow. She looked around one last time for Hatter, then abandoned her puddle. She couldn't afford not to have a friend. Oh, well, that's it for today's readings, you guys. I don't know what you guys thought about that. Alice is trapped in a new world and nobody knows her, and her little princess attitude isn't really going to get her far now, is it? Again, if you were watching and you have some artwork, don't forget to send it in either by commenting below on the YouTube page or inside of the twitch.tv/Toyzilla01. Again, I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you. And this has been this week's book club. This was the girl Toyzilla on Toyzilla Streams. Once again, if you like what you see, you turn on your PC and mute it. All right, you guys. Till next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye. Toyzilla is out.